Knowing the types of mouthparts that an insect has is something that you need to know for the 4-H contest. And an example of how this might be given to you on the contest is through a matching question like this, where you're given a list of either orders or common names, and you're asked to match what type of mouthpart they have. So for chicken head louse, which is now the chewing louse, these have chewing mouthparts. Houseflies have sponging mouthparts. Cabbage looper caterpillar, telling you that it's the larval form and not the adult form, has chewing mouthparts. Water striders are hemipterans. They have piercing and sucking mouthparts. And mosquitoes have piercing and sucking mouthparts. So there's two types of mouthparts that insects can have, mainly. And then there are a couple that are kind of in between. So mandibulate mouthparts are chewing mouthparts. Haustellate mouthparts are some type of a sucking mouthpart. So either they're piercing into plant tissue, skin, or another insect, and then sucking the juices out. They're siphoning, as with butterflies, where they're not piercing anything, they're just siphoning or sucking, slurping out the nectar. Sponging mouthparts are a type of sucking mouthpart, where they're sponging and slurping up with a sponge mouthpart, liquid food, and those are in flies. And then there's something in between. There's rasping mouthparts, which are found in thrips. This is kind of a scraping type of a mouthpart, and then slurping up the juices that you have caused to come out once you've rasped away at that plant tissue. And lapping mouthparts, which are really chewing mouthparts with a long tongue, so that things like bees, honeybees, and bumblebees can lap up nectar but also chew on pollen. This is a grasshopper demonstrating their chewing mouthparts. And you notice that there's different parts to the mouthparts, just like we have different parts to our jaw and our mouth. Those black things that are moving side to side are the actual teeth of the grasshopper, the mandibles. And then there's something on top that I think kind of looks like a mustache. That's akin to our upper lip. There's one underneath that is akin to our lower lip, protecting the teeth. That's the labium and the labrum. And then there are palps, those little finger-like projections that kind of help taste and push food into the mouth. But the black pieces going side to side are the actual mandibles that do the chewing motion. Insects with these chewing mouthparts or mandibulate mouthparts include the silverfish, order Zygentoma, mayflies, order Ephemeroptera, dragon and damselflies, order Odonata, stoneflies, which are the Plecoptera order, grasshoppers, katydids, crickets, orthopterans, walking sticks, Phasmatodea, earwigs, Dermaptera, mantids, praying mantises, Mantodea, cockroaches and termites, Blattodea, bark lice and chewing lice in the order Cicodia. The order Cicodia is funny because some of them have piercing sucking mouthparts. Dobson flies, Megaloptera, lacewings, owlflies, antlions in Neuroptera, also snake flies and mantispids, and then scorpion flies in the order Mecoptera. All of the beetles have chewing mouthparts, Coleoptera, caddisflies, Trichoptera, and then wasps, ants, and sawflies, Hymenoptera, have chewing mouthparts. Piercing and sucking mouthparts are called haustellate mouthparts, or haustellate includes any of those mouthparts that suck, that drink up food. Some insects have to pierce into their food and then suck the juices out. One example, of course, are mosquitoes, piercing your skin and sucking out your blood. This is a green stink bug with those piercing and sucking mouthparts. Now, they have all the same pieces to their mouth that grasshopper had. They're just modified and adapted to do something different. So the black teeth that the grasshopper had that you saw moving side to side are now modified to this long, single, skinny little tube. And what was protecting that little tube was kind of the mustache and the bottom lip that we couldn't see on the grasshopper. And so all that penetrates that plant tissue is this skinny, skinny little mouth part that's going to pierce inside and then suck the juices. Insects with piercing and sucking or Haustellate mouthparts include lice, the sucking lice like head lice, hog louse, Cicodia, all the true bugs, Hemiptera, Heteroptera, the cicadas, hoppers, aphids, and whiteflies in the order Hemiptera, suborder Echinorhyncha and Sternorhyncha, fleas in the order Siphonoptera, and mosquitoes in the order Diptera. Another type of haustellate mouthpart are siphoning mouthparts. These are butterflies, moths, and skippers. There's no piercing that's going on. They're just drinking up the nectar, slurping up the nectar. So a butterfly and a moth take their little proboscis, their long proboscis, and they keep it rolled up under their skin until they're ready to feed on the plant tissue. And so you can see this butterfly's proboscis kind of moving side up and down as it moves into the nectary and drinks the nectar out of those flowers. Here's another butterfly visiting these little flowers, using its proboscis to go into those little holes to get to the nectar, just drinking nectar as it moves along. Another type of haustellate mouthpart are sponging mouthparts. These are done by houseflies and other flies. But they're basically, imagine that you don't have lips anymore, you just have a sponge for your mouth. And so everything that they feed on has to be liquid already. So if they land on solid food, in order to make that a liquid, they'll regurgitate what was in their stomach. That stomach acid helps dissolve the food, and then they'll slurp it up with their sponging mouthparts. But it's still a type of sucking mouthpart, haustellate mouthpart. And then honeybees have kind of a bit of both. Lapping mouthparts are what they're called, but they're able to chew, and they have a long tongue, not quite a proboscis. I guess you could call it a short proboscis, but it's a long tongue so that they can lap up nectar, but they also have the ability to chew. They help chew up wax that they produce to help mold and make it into their nest. They also will chew pollen. Honeybees and bumblebees in the order Hymenoptera have these lapping mouthparts. And then thrips in the order Thysanoptera have a very unique mouthpart. They have an asymmetrical mouthpart, and they are rasping mouthparts. So they rasp, scratch, or kind of chew at leaf tissue, pollen, other things. Even when they're predatory, they'll use these rasping mouthparts to kill their prey and then drink up the juices that may exude from the damage that they've done. So to review, there's two main types of mouthparts: mandibulate or chewing, and haustellate, which is sucking. The different types of haustellate mouthparts include piercing and sucking, siphoning and sponging, and then somewhere in between there are lapping mouthparts by bees and bumblebees and rasping mouthparts by our thrips.